Welcome back for all of our listeners, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Kimberly, your host, and this is The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. Now, today's topic revolves around something that's a little less educational and a little bit more politically focused. So if that's not your cup of tea, that's totally cool, but just a disclaimer for those who may not want to have anything of that genre in their space at the moment. This is not particularly an episode that's focused around what I would call solutions per se, but it's more along the lines of awareness, and it's definitely related to the educational system at large. So to cut straight to the chase, today I am chatting about the CDC, who have been caught yet again poking their nose where it does not belong. Now, for those of you who may not know, the CDC stands for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. This organization has been in the spotlight ever since what I would say is March of 2020, and is evidently using their clout to push other agendas that have nothing to do with viruses of any sort. The CDC is currently pushing a self-assessment tool on educational staff for LGBTQ inclusivity. And this is what the topic of today's podcast is. There was an article that was published on Breitbart, and I will link that in the blog that was published yesterday. So that would be February 6th for those of you who are tuning in on the day of publication. According to this article that was on Breitbart, or that still is on Breitbart, it was entitled, CDC Pushes Teachers to Measure Commitment to LGBTQ Inclusivity Instruction. And the self-assessment questions staff's commitment of their faithfulness to queer theory. The assessment very clearly posits a one-sided view of this issue, and it praises those who would conform to a certain narrative or ideology. The document in question encourages staff to teach sexual education with what is a gender-neutral anatomy concept. So boys would be referred to as bodies with a penis, and girls would be referred to as bodies with a vagina. Teachers are required to post LGBTQ plus positive materials in their classrooms, and they are required to support children using washroom facilities of the opposite sex. Now, let's just be clear here. The issue that I am positing and the issue that is taken here is not with the declaration of gender itself. That is irrelevant. The issue is that teachers, and by extension other students, are being forced to promote and idealize this sort of thinking. While everyone should be accepted for who they are, absolutely, such programming has zero, I repeat, zero, place in schools. That sort of conversation belongs in the home and is the prerogative of the parents. Now, if you are wholly committed to this programming as a teacher, you are named an awesome ally. You've answered all the questions correctly. You've completely conformed to this strictly prescribed way of thinking. Congratulations, you are now termed to be highly inclusive. If you are only partially committed to this programming as a teacher, you are beginning to break through. You've got some work to do before you are considered acceptable by the powers that be. Don't worry, you're on your way. You've just got to think more like them. Way to go. You're considered moderately inclusive. If you're not so easily moved, perhaps having some free thoughts of your own, or very simply just questioning the reasoning behind this programming and why it is in schools, and you're not committed to it in the slightest, then you have a lot of serious work to do. You need to scrap your own thinking and get in line. Political agendas wait for no man or a woman or whatever they need you to be in the moment. You clearly need to commit to change, and you're considered minimally inclusive. Now, all sarcasm aside, there's a few problems with this program. There's more than a few, actually. So firstly, my question would be, where's the opt-out? What about the teachers who are interested in educating children with skills that they actually need to succeed in the workplace? What about the teachers who are not committed to pushing certain programs on children, what I might call indoctrination? There's no safe space that's provided for these teachers. They either agree with the rhetoric or are labeled minimally inclusive. Here I am reminded of something that a very wise man continues to say to me on a regular basis. Your opinion is tolerated only until it's different than the minorities. A question that I might ask here, a very important question, what is the difference between inclusion and indoctrination? There is a difference, even though programs like this may choose to ignore it. A school can absolutely and 100% be inclusive without virtue signaling by posting propaganda of how inclusive they are all over the building. A teacher can absolutely and 100% accept someone for who they choose to be without forcing other students to parrot the same sort of political agenda. A human being can be accepted for their choices while at the same time understanding and comprehending that other people will have different opinions about those choices. As long as those opinions are respectful, that is fine. That's called life. That's what happens in life. You make a decision, and someone may or may not agree with it. The point is that everyone's opinion should be respected as a basic human right. Now, I feel, a personal and professional opinion, that this program does not respect that basic human right because having an alternate opinion is not even a conceivable thought. That is the basis of indoctrination. You're not allowed to think outside of the thought process that's allowed by the authorities. Years ago, and even today, in today's society, we recognize that as something that is called cultish. Today, you can find that thinking right in the midst of the CDC. Now, a large concern is that this ideology has no scientific background. Gender affirming as a method of care for children who are transitioning genders has not been found to have any basis in medicine, particularly, I might stress, when the parents are not involved and the educational system is. In some European countries, concerns have been raised. A study has been done that has found that actions to socially transition children has perpetuated gender dysphoria in these same children. This means that children are actually learning this sort of thinking, that it is a learned behavior, and that for some children, the logical conclusion would be that for some children, this is not an organic choice. One last question that I would like to posit. What about the parents' voice? What about parents and families involved in schools that are supposed to accept this programming? Are their thoughts valued and respected? I did say that there was no real solution that was posited in this podcast. I just want to leave you with one final thought. As a parent or a caregiver, you have every right to demand respect and value from the school that your child is in. The education system is supposed to teach students how to succeed in basic skills such as literacy, mathematics, history, etc. Not to ignore family values and propagate political agendas through children. CDC or not, no one has the right to take your place as the parent of your child. That is all for this week's episode of The Parents Solution. If you have any comments or questions, either about this issue or others that have come up for you, you can always find me on social media. It's Star Students on Facebook and LinkedIn, or starstudents.learning on Instagram. You can also reach out through email, which is all over social media channels. Thank you, as always, so much for listening, and I'll be back next week with a very special and science-y guest. Stay tuned.